It all started and happened at a meeting of the Commission in 1988. Although there was great friction between John Gotti and Chin Gigante, and indeed the latter had even attempted to have the former whacked, there was an effort at friendly relations. In a moment of pride, Gotti said that his son, John Jr., was now a made man of the Mafia. Undoubtedly, Gotti expected a round of congratulations. He did not get any from the Chin. Instead, Gigante's face dropped, and he looked grayer than usual, through a 5-day growth of beard. Most Mafia mobs claim they do not want their sons following in their footsteps. Most are not successful at preventing it. Their sons see their stature grow because of the father's activities, and men, with limited education, making big money, and their drive to follow in their footsteps often becomes irresistible. Mobsters who succeed in setting their sons on a straight path usually swell with pride. Tommy Luchis never stopped boasting about his eldest son, who went to West Point, to lead a successful military career and life that avoided all connection with his father's business. Chin Gigante never permitted any of his sons to be made. Neither did Paul Castellano nor Sammy the Bull, the latter vowing he would see to it that his son never followed in his footsteps. Carlo Gambino, at least according to mob dogma, always said he would have his sons stay legit or he would kill them. The fact remains, however, he set them up in the mob-contaminated trucking business in New York's Garment District. If that was an effort to keep them clean, it was a rather unique approach. It remains difficult to determine if the fathers, in these cases, really wanted that kind of succession. There is no doubt that Joe Colombo Sr. was following family tradition. His grandfather was in the mob and strangled for some breach of mob etiquette. Similarly, Colombo's father Anthony was rubbed out in the same fashion in 1938, and it was well known he had broken mob rules. None of this disillusioned Joe Colombo. There was no rescuing the third Colombo from the forces of nepotism. Today, the most prominent Mafia son is John Gotti Jr., although it was said that Gotti originally wanted both his sons Junior and Frank to be successful in legitimate fields. The effort to set them straight was wasted in Junior's case. Years of training at a military academy did little good, and he gravitated to the fringes of the mob, soon being dubbed the baby monster by the press. The elder Gotti had no choice but to accept his son into the Gambino family. It might have been different in the case of young Frank, who, unlike his brother, showed a great aptitude for learning. Gotti sent Frank to an expensive private school and beamed about his son's academic abilities. He would corner mob associates, some of whom could barely read, with his report card. And Gotti was even more impressed by the teacher's many comments of praise, added on the back of the report card. Gotti intended to send his son to a top Ivy League university, and probably would have made sure he became a leader in some honest profession. Then, 12-year-old Frank was killed while riding his bike when a car driven by a neighbor, John Favara, struck him. Favara would die for his no-fault driving. That probably placated John Gotti, to some extent, and perhaps weakened his resolve to save Junior from the mob life. After John Gotti went to prison for life, he had to name his son acting boss of the crime family, because under prison regulations, he could visit his father and through various codes, get orders to pass along to the mob. With John Jr.'s subsequent imprisonment for 77 months, during which time the elder Gotti had died, the son could entertain the possibility he might get out and perhaps be free of his underworld problems. But by 2003, it was apparent that that probably would not come to pass. It was said testimony by a highly prized informant could be the vehicle for numerous other charges against the younger Gotti. Mickey Scars would implicate Junior in a number of violent crimes. One would be the fatal stabbing in 1983 of 24-year-old Danny Silva in a dispute in a Queens bar. Then, there would be Mickey Scars' testimony in the 1992 hit of Thomas and Rosemary Hoover, who had robbed a string of mob-tied social clubs. The pair ended up each with 3 bullets in the head. Then, there was the attempted killing of talk radio host Curtis Sliwa, after he made disparaging remarks on air about the Dapper Don. On June 19, 1992, Sliwa was kidnapped and shot by 2 gunmen after entering a stolen taxi in Manhattan. The taxi picked up Sliwa near his home in the East Village, and a gunman, hiding in the front passenger seat, jumped up and fired several shots, hitting him in the groin and legs. The kidnapping was foiled when Sliwa leapt from a front window of the moving cab and escaped. It is really only a fine point whether some mafia bosses manage to keep their offspring from becoming made men. Among those who follow in their father's footsteps, there is no likelihood they will move up the management ladder. In fact, often the comparison with the father makes it most difficult for them. Joe Bonanno tried to make both of his sons fit for leadership but failed miserably. Both Chin Gigante and Sammy the Bull insisted they would never allow their offspring to take mafia vows, but they were far less successful keeping them on the straight and narrow. In 2002, the Chin's son, Andrew Gigante, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit extortion and accepted a 2-year prison term. When Sammy the Bull was convicted in his rehabilitation days for a major ecstasy racket, his wife and daughter were caught in the net, as well as his son. Whatever Sammy was, he was hardly a lovable dad. In the Gigante, Gravano, and Gotti cases, nepotism, apparently, was a disaster for the offspring. Most mob guys fail at this, but at least one mafia boss apparently did a good job of shielding his son from any criminal activities. Anthony Carallo was one major godfather who shielded his family, whom he called the dearest thing in the world, and insisted their privacy not be tampered with. Carolla never provided any information about his survivors, a son and daughter, and his orders were still strong enough on his death in 2000, where friends and allies would not provide any information about them.